Okay, let's cut to the chase. You're here because you want to understand the big, complicated stuff, right? Without digging through tons of reports.
Mm-hmm.
And today, that big, complicated stuff is the trade war between the U.S. and China.
Yeah, and we've got a really good way into this. We're using excerpts from a documentary script. It's called Trade Wars, the USA, China, and the Global Economic Battlefield.
Right.
Think of it like the highlights reel for this, multi-year economic slugfest. Gives you the backstory, the main events, and maybe a glimpse of what's next.
Exactly. So our mission here is simple. Pull out the really critical insights from this script.
Yep.
We want to get clear on, why it started, the key moments, the global impact, and that big question. Where does it all go from here?
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's kick things off. Where did this whole economic boxing match even begin?
Well, the documentary script takes us back. Starts with China's economic reforms under Deng Xiaoping.
Oh, right.
And initially, the West saw this opening as a positive thing. Good for everyone. More markets, more opportunity.
Yeah, I remember that. The hope was that opening up economically would lead to other kinds of liberalization, too.
Exactly. But then you get to 2001. Big moment. China joins the World Trade Organization, WTO.
That feels like a real turning point, doesn't it?
It really was.
Mm.
The script highlights how Chinese exports just went into, hyperdrive after that.
Flooding into markets everywhere.
Especially the U.S. You saw this huge influx of Chinese goods.
And the documentary covers the consequences here.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't pull punches.
Huh.
It talks about U.S. factory closures, manufacturing job losses, the whole Rust Belt narrative.
Right.
There's even a quote from an economist in the script calling the impact on many American workers devastating.
So it wasn't just abstract numbers, real people, real communities.
Absolutely. And while Washington had that initial optimism, the script points out that concerns started mounting pretty quickly.
Okay, what kind of concern?
Well, things like forced technology transfers.
The idea that U.S. companies had to share their tech secrets to get market access.
Exactly that. Plus, state subsidies giving Chinese companies an unfair advantage, cyber espionage was a growing worry, and of course that massive widening trade deficit.
So the level playing field everyone hoped for, it didn't quite happen.
Not really, no. Which, sets the stage perfectly for the next phase described in the script, Act 2, the Trump administration strikes back.
Right. The rhetoric definitely shifted leading up to 2016. America First became the slogan.
And the documentary script connects that directly to those simmering concerns we just talked about. It tapped into that feeling that the existing system wasn't fair to the U.S.
And then came the actual actions, the tariffs.
Yep. Starting in 2018, the script details how the U.S. imposed tariffs on, over $250 billion worth of Chinese imports?
From things like steel, aluminum.
And crucial tech components, yeah. The documentary is clear. The aim was to use economic leverage to pressure China into changing its trade practices, hardball tactics.
But trade wars are rarely one-sided, are they?
Never. And the script emphasizes China's immediate response. Retaliation.
What did that look like?
Tariffs on key American exports. Soybeans, pork, automobiles. Things that would hit specific U.S. sectors hard.
Ah, the impact on farmers. That was big news.
Huge. The script really highlights the unprecedented uncertainty for U.S. farmers. Market volatility went through the roof. It led to those massive government bailout packages, remember?
Yeah, I do. It sounds almost unbelievable now.
The script even quotes a farmer, saying they hadn't seen anything like it market-wise in decades. And this idea that a single tweet could send prices swinging wildly.
That really hammers home the kind of instability this introduced, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But, this wasn't just a U.S.-China thing. The documentary script moves into Act 3, looking at the global picture. How did other countries react?
That's a great question. What did the script find?
Well, it talks about manufacturers starting to hedge their bets, moving some production out of China.
Ah, looking for alternatives.
It's exactly to places like Southeast Asia. Vietnam, for instance, saw a big surge in its exports, according to the script. Mexico also became more attractive, especially for goods heading to the U.S. market.
Trying to sidestep those tariffs.
Precisely. And the script also mentions India pushing its own Make in India initiative, trying to capture some of that shifting manufacturing.
Interesting. So it caused a real reshuffling.
Yeah, and perhaps accelerated a bigger trend. The script suggests this trade war might have sped up the move towards a less U.S.-dominated global economy, a more multipolar world.
How so?
Well, it touches on China's ongoing Belt and Road Initiative, those huge infrastructure investments across Asia and Africa, places like Kenya, Kazakhstan.
Building influence.
Right. And meanwhile, you see the EU starting to look much more closely, maybe more critically, at Chinese investments within Europe.
And other allies.
Countries like Australia, Canada, Japan.
Mm-hmm.
The script notes, they all began reassessing their trade relationships in this new sort of more contentious environment.
Okay, so the ripples spread wide. But then the conflict itself seemed to morph, didn't it? Beyond just goods and tariffs.
Exactly. Act 4 in the documentary script gets into the tech war and this idea of strategic decoupling.
Right. It wasn't just about trade balances anymore.
No, it became about technology, about national security. The script details the U.S. blacklisting of Huawei, citing security risks. Then the whole saga with TikTok, the potential ban.
High-profile examples.
And China pushed back too, didn't it? The script mentions crackdowns on American tech firms operating inside China. It was becoming tit for tat in the tech space.
So this was really about future dominance.
Very much so. The script frames it as a battle for control over critical technologies. Semiconductors.
The chips that run everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And 5G networks, artificial intelligence. These were seen as the keys to future economic and military power.
And the U.S. response.
Things like the GPS Act, a major push, detailed in the script, to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to the U.S. reshoring.
So a clear shift in priorities.
Definitely. Yeah. Towards national security, towards controlling your own critical supply chains. Less about pure free trade, more about strategic control.
There was that quote you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, from a tech policy analyst in the script, defining decoupling as going way beyond just goods. It's about data flows, chip technology, intellectual dominance, a much deeper separation.
Wow. Okay, and then, as if things weren't complicated enough?
Along comes a global pandemic.
Right.
Act V of the script looks at COVID-19 as this massive, unexpected stress test for global supply chains.
It really exposed vulnerabilities, didn't it?
Absolutely. The script highlights how dependent the world had become on, well, hyper-efficient global trade, especially manufacturing centered in China.
And when Chinese factories shut down.
And you saw the domino effect, shortages of PPE, those vital medical supplies, at the beginning.
Yeah.
Then the chip delays hitting everything from cars to computers and contributing to inflation. The script links it all back.
So the pandemic sort of underlined the risks of that efficiency model.
It really did. The script points to a shift in thinking. Suddenly, resilience became the buzzword, not just efficiency. Building in buffers, securing domestic supply. Self-reliance became a much bigger focus for many countries.
Which leads us toward the present day and the Biden administration's approach, Act 6 in the script.
Right. And interestingly, the documentary notes that while the rhetoric softened compared to Trump, many of those tariffs actually stayed in place.
So not a complete reversal.
Not at all. But the script highlights a shift in strategy, a much bigger emphasis on rebuilding alliances, working with partners, and focusing on what they call a worker-centric trade policy. Plus, big domestic investments, clean tech, semiconductors again, energy independence.
So competing, but maybe more collaboratively.
That seems to be the idea. The script gives examples, setting up the U.S.-EU Tech Council, coordinating through the Quad Security Dialogue with Japan, India, Australia.
Closer ties with India, yeah.
Defense deals there, too. The script frames the overarching strategy as something like containment through collaboration, trying to diplomatically manage China while simultaneously strengthening America's own industrial capabilities and those of its allies.
Which brings us to the final act, Act 7. And this sort of unsettling question the documentary raises. Are we entering a truly fractured world order?
It certainly feels like the ground is shifting, doesn't it? The script talks about the potential emergence of a new kind of Cold War.
But different from the last one.
Yeah, maybe less ideological, more focused on competition for global influence, economic blocs, technological leadership, not just trade deficits.
What are the signs of that, according to the script?
Things like discussions around alternative currency alliances, challenging the dollar's dominance, fierce competition over critical resources like rare earth elements.
Vital for tech.
Absolutely. And the formation or expansion of strategic trade pacts and blocs. The script mentions the expansion of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now others, and the increasing use of the Chinese yuan in bilateral trade deals.
So countries are kind of navigating this new landscape, maybe choosing sides or trying to balance.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
The script suggests nations are increasingly having to make strategic choices in this more competitive environment. It's not as simple as it used to be.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive based on the documentary script,
Yeah.
what are the big takeaways sticking with you?
For me, it's that clear arc from this initial embrace of economic integration with China
Yeah, the win-win idea.
to a period of really intense trade conflict, and then seeing how that conflict just kept widening.
Right.
From tariffs on goods to battles over technology, and now into this broader geopolitical competition.
It's not just about economics anymore.
Not at all. The script really drives home that these trade issues are now deeply tangled up with trust, with supply chain resilience, national security, and really long-term strategic vision.
And that final thought from the documentary script is quite powerful. The global economy is no longer a one-way street. It's a crossroads.
Yeah, that really makes you think, doesn't it? About how interconnected we still are, despite all this friction. Which way do we turn at this crossroads?
Exactly. It prompts you to consider the future of globalization, of interdependence in this, well, much more contested world.
Yeah, it certainly does. And maybe it leaves you, the listener, with this question to bow on. Considering the documentary's title, Trade Wars, The Future is Interdependent, what do you see as the biggest challenges, but also maybe the biggest opportunities in navigating this complex new global economic landscape?
Definitely something to think about long after we finish here.